Let's talk a little bit about drafting and building your test plan. So, like we just talked about previously in Tuesday number one's module, there are a lot of different ways you can conduct user research. For this project and for this course, we're going to be focused on just doing some really basic preliminary user interviews just to kind of get our feet wet in the user research kind of realm of UI UX design, and really just looking to get some information that's going to help set you up for success as we go into project number 4 and building a product that or an idea, a concept that is driven by user needs and what the folks that you interview might want to see in a product. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited for y'all to get a taste of that in this course, in this semester. I think it's a unique opportunity to do that, something I wish I would have had insight into at this stage in my career and development as a designer, that I'm really excited for y'all to do. For some folks, it might be like it was for me, maybe a little challenging at first, but just go with it, and I'm excited about it. I think it's going to help provide a lot of great value as we go into project number 4. And if you're interested in pursuing this as a career, as something you want to do long term, this would be definitely something that you would be considered a part of your role as a UI UX designer, is conducting some basic user interviews at the forefront or at the end of a project. And so with that, maybe let's go into talking a little bit about drafting and building your test plan. So the test plan itself is one of the most important steps in this discovery process. What it'll do is it's going to ensure the successful outcome when you're chatting with an interviewee. If you're like me, it's easy to maybe lose track of time when you're when you're having a conversation, or if you're conducting an interview, or lose track of maybe your notes or your ideas or the questions you want to ask. And really that's what a test plan serves to do. Remember, in your interview, like we talked about in the previous module, you want to be authentic and curious and seek to discover the type of information that's going to make your product better and a more user-friendly, user-focused product. And so this is the drafting and building a test plan module, as you know. It's a 2-part post, like most of our milestones have been in our course so far. Start just with what actually is a test plan itself. So a test plan is essentially a script that you'll use to conduct your user interviews. It's going to help you navigate through your session. Like I said, it kind of helps keep you on track, ensure that you gather the right information, and as a template of sorts, it's going to ensure that you can have something that's repeatable, that you can walk through for each of these interviews that you're going to do. And that's going to help you discover trends and patterns as you talk to different users who are going to bring different perspectives and ideas and answers to your script and to your interview. I've got a snapshot here of a test plan, a test script that's included in this module for you to look at, for you to kind of see how it breaks down. And we'll walk through that here in a second, maybe a little bit more in depth. So as far as the structure of a test script goes, this is a structure that I've used in the past. There's a lot of different ways that you could structure your test plan, but I just wanted to maybe showcase a way that I've done it in the past. I think it's really easy to think about it in this way, and has helped me have successful user interviews, and hopefully it'll help you too. So like any good story, a test plan or a testing script really has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And your purpose in that is to maybe introduce your way into the actual script, the actual interview, use the kind of the middle as where you can spend the most time asking questions. And then at the end, you want to leave it on a positive note, and just kind of wrap up the conversation itself. And so your goal is to have just a natural and a comfortable conversation with your end user that's going to elicit the ideas and the suggestions that are going to help you improve your product. In this case, help you get a little bit more ideas around what the main objectives for your goals of this product or this app should be. And so maybe with that, let's break this down a little bit and talk about what I've typically included, what I think might be helpful to get you thinking about what do each of these sections typically include in them as you build out your testing script. And so let's start with the introduction. Your introduction is all about just kind of welcoming the user into the space, into the setting, into the conversation. And so typically this includes your name and your role, you personally as the designer in the project or in this product. It invites the user into the conversation or into the process. It invites them to be to be a participant in the experience, knowing that their feedback is going to help improve this product that you're building. It sets expectations for a few things in this introduction. You want to set expectations for the time. Let them know whether this is going to be something that's going to take them an hour or if it's going to take them just a few minutes. Pro tip: you want to shoot for a few minutes. Typically, users don't like to sit around for an hour to provide feedback unless they're being incentivized by some sort of gift card or something like that. And so keep it short, keep it sweet, and keep it to the point. And you'll be good, and your end user will kind of see this as non-invasive to their day, and will be a good experience all around. It's also going to set expectations for the theme of the question. So it's going to give the end user an idea of what types of questions you might be asking for the type of genre of a product or an application that you're working on. So you might say that your name is Ryan Firm and you're the designer on a project called X, whatever product or application that you're working on. I want to welcome you into the conversation. I'm excited to have you as a part of this today. It's going to help us improve our product as we go into the different stages of the design process. The goal is to talk with you for about 10 to 15 minutes around the idea or the subject of online streaming music or an entertainment app, or around camping or traveling, no matter, depending on what your genre or theme is. You also want to set expectations for the user to be open and honest. So one thing to keep in mind in these interviews is that you're not testing the person across the table from you. There is no right or wrong answer. That's part of being curious as the designer, as the interviewee, as the interviewer. And so you're not testing this individual that you're sitting across the table with. You're asking them to be open and honest, and nothing they say or nothing they do is going to hurt your feelings as a designer. You just want to get information from them that's going to help you provide a better product on the outset of your work. That's going to provide a great end user experience. And then lastly, you want to ask permission to record. We'll talk about that in Thursday evening's kind of module a little bit more, but it's important that you don't, record a user without their approval or their willingness to be recorded. So in this introduction section, you want to make sure you ask their permission to record. If they say no, you can end the interview right there. You're going to have to find another, find somebody else to interview, and that's totally fine. If they say no, but they'd love to continue the conversation, then you might just have to take some really detailed notes, which kind of throws a wrench in things. But it's always great to record a conversation. You just want to make sure that you have their permission to do that. And so including that type of information in the script itself will just help keep you on track and get an idea for the end user of what to expect here in the introduction. So let's talk about then the warm-up. So typically what is included includes questions like some general information about the user. The way I've used questions in this warm-up phase is maybe to help me build out my persona a little bit more. So maybe I had some assumptions about what these users' frustrations were, their goals, or the things that they enjoyed. And so here I might just ask some general questions about who this person is, and maybe help flesh out my persona a little bit more so I can follow back up and maybe make some updates there. It also includes some primer questions about the experience related to the type of product that you're working on. So let's say that you're building an app for folks who love to travel. You might just want to say like, hey, tell me one of your favorite places to travel. Tell me one of your favorite places to go on a trip. And get their conversation going a little bit by something that they can relate to and they can find interesting, and is really just an easy question for them to answer. This group of questions is just to start encouraging the conversation itself. So you want to maybe start with some softball questions, some easy questions here in the warm-up, some questions that are going to maybe help flesh out your persona a little bit more, maybe help learn a little bit about who this person is, what they like to do as it relates to the genre of product that you're working on. So let's dig in now into the middle, the meat and potatoes, if you will, of your actual user interview. So this is where the main interview happens. It typically includes your objective or objectives. You can have multiple objectives for your interview. These are just really the buckets that you want to capture questions and feedback in, to really help structure the conversation, to help make sure that you're hitting your top line items for the actual interview itself. So it'll include your objectives or your buckets. You don't have to necessarily state your objective to the end user, but if you have that objective kind of fresh on the page in your mind, it might just help you theme. And the way you can approach that is to say, okay, in the next couple of questions I have are geared towards understanding X, and that X could be your objective, and your questions help support or bring to light context and answers to solve for that objective, for that problem statement that you've selected. Your main interviews also include those deeper questions that are going to help provide insights to inform your decisions on the product. So don't lose sight of the fact that these interviews are to help you understand and give a little bit more context to who your users are and what they would expect out of your product, the product that you're building. As a pro tip, this is the time to be curious and to be an active listener. And so if your user is kind of, bringing to light something that's really interesting for them, or a time or an experience or something that you didn't even think about that just they mentioned, it's a time for you to be curious and to ask maybe deeper questions, maybe to go off script a little bit. For me, I've found in those moments, I really find kind of the golden nuggets or the hidden jewel within the interview is when somebody says something that it really just kind of sparks my interest, or from a creative perspective, just makes me think about something that I hadn't thought about before. And so you want to be curious and learn more about that. And so it's a great time in this main interview, throughout the whole interview, to be curious and to be an active listener, but really in this main interview section here. So depending on what you end up doing for your interview, you might have multiple objectives or multiple things that you want to make sure you cover within your interviews. And that's great. Just make sure you're keeping from a time perspective in mind, not using up too much time of your end user's day or the session. And then the questions you have support that objective and help bring to light that feedback. Let's go to the second to last section called the cool down, or the wrap up here. And so in this section, I typically include maybe a fun question or two. Maybe it's a game, a name game or something like that to end the interview on. It's really kind of to end it on a upbeat, a positive note. Maybe where in the past couple of minutes we've been really heavy into wanting to understand different questions and our objectives and maybe asking some deeper questions. This is for a time for you to kind of take a step out of that and provide maybe a question that's really more playful, more fun, to kind of wrap up the interview. And again, this could be an area of a question that could help support that your persona, or to give insight into a feature or an app or a product that you're working on. And we're going to go through that example I had earlier here, and maybe it'll help kind of shed some light on what I'm talking about for this cool down section. And then finally, your closing statement, your closing area. Here you want to open the door for any other feedback. And so maybe, an opportunity for you to say, hey, is there anything else now that we've kind of walked through these questions that you want to make sure you kind of have stated on the record that, that you find interesting or compelling about a product that solves for X or something like that. And so you want to make sure you give them an opportunity to kind of have the last word and to say their last piece there. in the closing statement, you want to definitely say thank you and kind of thank them for their time and open up an invitation to give more feedback as the process continues. In kind of a professional setting, in the products that I've worked on, some of these initial interviews, like we're doing right now, that come out of defining the persona and before a product or a project begins, what I like to do is ask them, hey, we're going to walk through a process where we're going to be designing information architecture. Would you be interested in doing a card sort at that point? Or we're going to have some wireframes or some high fidelity prototypes. We'd love to get your feedback on those later on in the process. And so I've always, typically circle back to these same users and invite them along the entirety of the process to get their feedback along the way. And so typically it includes an invitation to give more feedback as the process continues. So let me jump into real quick before we go into these things to consider. And let me just show you kind of the example of this. So this is an interview guide that I created for a project that's centered around the Marriott rewards application on your phone, on a phone. And here I was really trying to see, how did end users who had the Marriott app interact with it? What were some of the key features that they thought were important for the app? Were there any features within the Marriott app that they found not useful or not really applicable to kind of what they did on their journey? And one of the things I had noticed was in the Marriott app, there were some things that maybe didn't make sense, or some things that they included in the application that I thought maybe that the end user really wouldn't probably use that app for itself. And so this is really where kind of the genesis of this interview and the reason why, but you can kind of see how I broke it down here. So here I've just got my basic introduction. So hi, insert name here. My name is Ryan Furman. I like to just get started by thanking you for taking a few minutes to chat today. So I talk a little bit about who I am, what my role is in this project. I'm a user experience designer working towards understanding how people engage on a hospitality website, and then set them up for today. Today I'm going to be asking you questions. It's going to take about 15 minutes of your time. It's going to specifically center around travel and hospitality. And then if they have any questions about this before we start, I want to encourage them to be open and honest. Ask them if they're okay with being recorded, and go from there. In the warm up, this is again just all right. Insert name. Do you mind telling me a little bit about yourself? I want to be curious and get to know them as an interviewee. Ask a few questions to help support those specific questions. Here in the main interview questions, then I get down to kind of the meat and potatoes of that. So, like I said, my objectives were to know a little bit more about the types of trips that they're taking and how they go about booking them as an end user. And so for that objective, then I kind of have a question to kind of prime that of tell me a little bit about your last trip and the reason you decided to go there. And then my supporting questions to follow that up. Do you remember how you booked the trip? Were you at home? Were you at work? Were you at a park or library browsing for that trip? In general, is this generally how you typically do that? Or was this kind of a one-off scenario? And so you'll see as you go up through these questions, the user's going to kind of unfold that a little bit for you and answer those questions, again, in ways that you might not expect. It's just really cool. Again, another bucket was while you're on I wanted to learn about rewards points, and was it something that was a user was providing finding value in or utilizing along the way. And so for that objective, I wanted to ask some questions around how did they sign up? What were some of the benefits they thought were important? And again, so you can see in this main interview, I've got several objectives or several kind of big bucket areas that are followed up by supporting questions. Once we go through those main interview questions, I have a cool down question, kind of the last question that's a little bit more playful, a little bit more loose, I guess, not super in-depth as a question. And I just said, hey, let's play a game, a little name game. What amenities would you associate with the word, with the term luxury hotel? One of the things about this app is they wanted to position Marriott brands as, a luxury brand as a luxury hotel. And so without, saying Marriott or without saying those words, I wanted to know, or I was curious about if they even kind of on their own will or, an open-ended question thought about Marriott as a luxury brand. And so, the Waldorf Astoria, Hilton hotels, things like that were ones that came to mind. And it was a way for me to kind of create a word cloud or create an idea of different brands that they thought were luxury. Again, a very kind of a loose, open question as part of the cool down. It's typically your last question ending on a high note, a little bit more fun there. Then I have the wrap up and the conclusion. Again, just says, that's it for my questions. Thanks for being here today. We're going to analyze this, look to make a great product there, and thank them for their experience. So hopefully that was helpful. I've got this included. I've got a couple other examples of testing scripts. Again, just think about this as if you were sitting across the table from somebody. What would be your notes? What would be the things that you want to have in front of you to help you, stay on track for your conversation for your interview? So a couple things then to consider as we go into this module, to this milestone. After you've created kind of your first draft of this script, practice it. Find somebody, maybe it's a spouse or a roommate, a friend, a coworker, somebody who has about 15 minutes that they can spare for you, and practice your script. Find someone who can help you kind of work out the kinks. What I've found is that if I can run my script by somebody else, they're probably going to give me some feedback initially to ask another question or to ask a question in a different way that I didn't know about from where I was sitting at drafting my test script. Also keep in mind, how long you want this to be. What I would advise is for you to shoot for about 10 to 15 minutes of a test script. And the script that I provided around the Marriott scenario, that took me about 10 to 15 minutes to conduct that. And so as you practice your script, shoot for that 10, to 12, 15 minute mark as kind of the sweet spot for that. And it's never too late to start recruiting. So you'll be asked in next week, I've primes that and kind of give some tips and tricks around recruiting and recording and some of the things that you'll want to do next week. So start recruiting, post on social media, ask a friend, ask a coworker, a parent. The people who you've created your primary personas, you're going to be asked to interview 3 people who fit that primary persona. Don't kind of lose sleep over trying to find the exact person who fits the name, description, income level, location, and things like that. I'll talk a little bit about that on Thursday evening, but you want to find somebody who fits into that model of that persona that you've crafted as your primary persona. So when we actually execute this test plan, it's going to be with 3 people who fit that primary persona. So we're a week ahead of that. So it's never too early to start recruiting. And so maybe just start and put some feelers out there. Go back, revisit your primary persona. Think about some people who might fit that if in your circle or friends of friends or family. Or again, the way I found a lot of my folks who I've interviewed to kind of just get ideas was to post on social media, throw up a story on Instagram or post on Facebook. Hey, do I have anybody who'd be interested sitting down talking with me about an application that does X or for a project that I'm working on? And you'll be surprised the people who will say, yeah, I'm good to sit for 15 minutes and talk with you about the apps or this idea. So line up those interviews, start recruiting now, put some feelers out there and see if you can find some folks who might fit that persona for you. So let's go over then this module, what's required for the post. You're going to build a draft of your test plan. Again, practice it first before you post it. Shoot for that 10 to 15 minute mark. Your test plan needs to include those things that we just went over: an introduction, warm-up questions, main interview questions. Those main interview questions would include your objective or objectives with your supporting questions to follow that up, a cool down question, and then a conclusion statement to summarize kind of what you just did with the user and kind of thanking them and things like that. So remember, your test plan is going to help you uncover the answers or feedback that supports your objective, contributing to your product's problem statement. Practice it and tailor and add any questions you might feel helpful to the interview. When conducting your interviews in the other module, like I said, we're going to shoot for a conversation about 10 to 15 minutes. Share a PDF. So again, like I mentioned, it'll be a little different, a lot more writing probably in this week's modules. But typical 8.5 by 11 Word doc, or if you wanted to create it in XD and design it a little bit, it's your script. So I tend to keep it as simple as I can, and it helps me go through that. Share your PDF. with your group with about 200 to 300 words that talk about what you hope that these interviews are going to assist, how you hope these interviews are going to help assist you in the design process of your product. As for the follow-up, again, a little bit different for this one. So review the test plan of the peers within your group. Provide any thoughts or takeaways, or if any questions that they asked maybe didn't make sense, or you might have a different way of asking it. And if you have your own answers, or if you have your own insights into the questions that they ask, share those. Even though you might not fit their primary persona, the insights and the feedback that you have, or the answers to those questions, will still be helpful to somebody else as they go through their design journey for this. So if you have answers or insights to provide based off of a peer's testing script, based off the questions that they're asking, feel free to provide your own insight. So provide your perspective, give your peers a little bit more data to work with, and post a 200-word evaluation for each of your members in your group. So excited for y'all to have a chance to do this. Again, I know this is a little different in this module this week, but this is really going to help us set up the foundation for our interviews and for our main report that we're going to generate next week. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what you do for your test plans. I'll read through them, provide any insight that I might have also, and we'll talk to y'all later in another course. All right, thanks everybody.